Our next speaker is Mikoláš Jurda from Brno, Czech Republic. Mikoláš is an assistant professor of anthropology, researching historical and forensic osteology, and a specialist in 3D digital imaging techniques. He will offer insight into everyday life, social structure, and values of communal society through architectural or archaeological fieldwork. This is amazing. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm pretty aware that I'm the only thing which stays between this part and exhibition and dinner, so I will try to be concise and stick with my notes. So, my contributions presents the progress of ongoing research on the South Moravia Anabaptist communities. I name it like this, but it will be mainly about city of Přibice and Anabaptist graveyard, which is near the city. I forgot to place a map here. Where the city of Přibice is approximately 1 hour to the north by car from here, or as I learned this morning, 1.5, because a lot of streets are closed. So it is necessary to state that while the contribution will adopt a biological perspective, the entire team involved in the project is multidisciplinary and investigates many other aspects of the historical communities. So a lot of us, almost 20. The project began in March 2023, so it has been running for a little over 2 years, and it's expected to continue until the end of 2027. The database have to be finished at 2027. There are a lot of colleagues from the Faculty of Arts, Department of History, Andrea Štěpánková, whose outstanding lecture you had before me, and also from Department for the Studies of Religions. We also have some colleagues from Poland, which help us with DNA analyzing of the remains. So, I have this one. Sorry. So I will begin with the motivation. There are many reasons to study the past rights communities. Beyond the effort to preserve the legacy of the former inhabitants of our region, there is numerous aspects of particular interest to us as biologists. The Hutterites represents a unique example of an early modern age community that migrated into environments shaped by both religious and ethnical diversity. Their way of life and cultural adaptations proved so successful. So successful that the community has survived to the present days, obviously. At the same time, they remain reproductively isolated, which allows us to observe temporal changes within the population more clearly. The way of life, and from biological perspective, experiment has spent 400 years so far and is well documented through very rich written sources, including records of individual surnames, distinctive material culture, biographical data on both historical and contemporary members. Furthermore, this group played a significant role in shaping the identity of our region, and at least in the case of the Přibice settlement, met a violent end, a circumstance that continues to intrigue and engage the public. This project offers a unique opportunity to examine these historical circumferences through the lens of modern scientific methods. To date, dozens of Hutterite settlements, or more precisely, villages with former Hutterite presence have been identified. In most of these towns and villages, there are very little significant visible traces of former settlements. The sites of original Bruderhöfe are usually occupied by newly built houses and gardens. What is even more interesting is that, with few exceptions, we don't know the burial grounds of this community. Yet we know that there must have been dozens of them connected to local Bruderhöfe and usually containing hundreds of skeletons or individuals. Within our project, we strive to obtain as many skeletal remains as possible from various areas of South Moravia. These are most of the places. However, this is not easy task. Graves attributed to the Hutterites were identified based on a simple burial rite. Simply put, if a skeleton was found in a supine position, laying on its back, without grave guards, there was a tendency to classify it as Hutterite. Yet, when we analyze such skeletons, we often find that they originate from different periods or have no connection to the German-speaking regions. Even with accurate dating, which falls into 16th century in Moravia, we cannot be certain that an individual was Hutterite, rather than a member of, for example, another Anabaptist community. This difficulty in attributing skeletal remains to Hutterites, as they often lack the funerary goods and do not stand out in any particular way, is also a reason why Hutterites and Anabaptists have never been systematically studied from biological perspective. These challenges also highlight the importance of the Přibice site, as its burial ground is the only known and confirmed Hutterite burial site in southern Moravia. It is also significant that the Přibice Bruderhof was one of the larger ones primarily focused on craft production. It was also one of the last yards which was abandoned. In 1620, it was attacked by Imperial Army. By 1622, it was permanently left. The first skeletal remains in Přibice were discovered in 1972 during the installation of an electric pole. This one. These initial findings were attributed to the Hutterites by Professor Josef Unger, who is here. And our systematic research has been ongoing since 2018, and so far we have been working within a 15 by 15 meter square area, just little area, which was fully explored last year. In this area alone, we have found 330 individuals. Well, this is some aerial footage of this is the original square, and this is the new one, which is prepared for this and next seasons. Sorry. Within this square, the grave pits were positioned next to each other with heads pointing towards southeast. A typical feature is the mutual disturbance of graves caused by repeated burials on the site of earlier interments. This may indicate that the graves were only temporarily marked and became indistinct after a few years. The bodies were laid supine with the upper limbs crossed over the chest, typically. We assume that both burials directly in the ground and coffin burials took place. Although we have not found any wood, nails were discovered in some graves. Additionally, historical sources indicate that some members explicitly requested burial without coffin, which suggests that both practices existed. Alongside with the superimposition of graves due to repeated use of the same site, we have also come across several graves containing multiple individuals. We are currently investigating whether these may be linked, for example, to a violent end of the settlement, or whether, for example, that contain remains of related individuals. The complex spatial relationship within the burial ground are one of the motivations for our careful and detailed documentation of the excavation graves. In addition to drawing and photography documentation, which is tradition, we have primarily employed detailed photogrammetric 3D documentation or scanning. This method allows us to study the spatial relationships more precisely, especially in the multiple graves, where it helps us to estimate better stature of the individuals or their spatial relations. Well, this is one of the documentations. It's a little bit fast, but it's how it usually looks. So, as for the grave goods, they consist almost exclusively of small items such as pins, fasteners or thimbles, which were most likely accidentally left in the clothing. Here you can see a few of these items, including the only coin minted in 1590. We also found evidence of nails indicating the former presence of coffins. As part of it, I will wait for the video, and this is the coin. As part of the analysis of the recovered individuals, estimates of their group characteristics are routinely made, including sex and age at death. Sex can be determined by osteological methods, which are based on morphological traits of or bone measures. These methods allow for sex estimation with a reliability over 90%, but they are not completely foolproof. For children, these methods are hardly applicable at all. However, within our project, we have the opportunity to estimate the sex of all individuals using DNA analysis. So far, approximately 54% are women and 46% are men. We understood that the sex ratio would be expected to be more balanced, 50-50. Our numbers are likely influenced by the fact that we do not have the entire burial ground and have by chance sampled an area where there are simply more women. Regarding age at death, we can rely only on bone morphology, as DNA analysis does not provide information on this parameter. The most striking feature of age distribution is the relative low number of neonates and toddlers and young children. We know that in other populations, child mortality exceeded 30%, so the burial ground should also contain about 1/3 of very young children. This difference between our expectations and the reality indicate that child mortality was lower in the population and the children were healthier. Maybe. However, it is more likely a reflection of the fact that not all individuals have been preserved to present day. Gracile and small bones are more prone to decomposition than adult ones. So fewer of them may be preserved and discovered. This interpretation is further supported by the possibility that children were buried in shallower graves, making them more vulnerable to destruction by soil erosion. Another important characteristic is stature. We can say that both men and women from Přibice were fairly comparable to the medieval populations. Přibice are in the middle. On the left, you can see the medieval populations, which we have as comparison material, and these are modern Czech men and women. One might argue that it is not entirely appropriate to compare medieval population with the early modern population of Přibice. I agree. However, we currently lack comparative data for their contemporaries, and we do not anticipate that there were systematic changes between Middle Age and early modern age. The final objective of our osteological examination is to identify individuals who died in connection with the violent end of the settlement. So far, however, we have found very few injuries consistent with violent trauma. Among the most noteworthy are possible chop marks on the skull of an approximately 30-year-old male, The chop mark is here, and the puncture wound on the skull of a woman of the same age, these two wounds. At this point, we cannot determine, however, whether these individuals are indeed associated with the end of the settlement. We would have expected that victims of the final massacre to be buried together, at least in a close proximity. However, we have not discovered such group yet. As mentioned earlier, only a small part of the burial ground has been excavated so far, and the site extends for dozens of meters in several directions. It is therefore entirely possible that we simply have not yet come across these individuals. Regarding chemical and biochemical analysis, we can begin with radiocarbon dating. We are pleased to report that most of the individuals have been dated to the 16th century. That's why I'm standing here. And this supports our confidence that this is indeed a Hutterite burial ground. However, these are indications that some individuals were buried later in 17th century. We tend to interpret these as burials of people who remained in Přibice after the Böderhof was abandoned and were subsequently buried by the local community at the Přibice, at the cemetery. Strontium analysis focused on the geographic origin of the individuals. Okay, this is my mistake. Yeah, it's also here, sorry. Strontium isotopes analysis focused on the geographic origin of the individuals have so far shown considerable variability, suggesting the potential presence of non-local individuals within the group. However, this is exactly the pattern we expected. The cemetery must contain individuals who grew up in southern Moravia and are viewed as local, and further, some of the people who came to the South Moravia. Further research in this area may provide deeper insight into dynamics of the group as a whole, including how frequently new arrivals from other regions were incorporated. Isotopic analysis can also shed light on diet of the local population. At this stage, however, we only have preliminary results. Regarding dietary protein compositions, pork dominates by the white matter gene, followed by a chicken, while other types of meat are represented only in minor proportions. Finally, we have reached the preliminary results of the genetic analysis. In addition to allowing us to reliably determine the sex of the buried individuals, we are also performing complete genome sequencing. So far, the analysis has focused primarily on the kinship of the Přibice community to the other European populations, and the results show that individuals from the Přibice burial site are indeed closely related to contemporary German populations. These are here. Yeah, these are very small letters. Here are Poles, and the red dots are people from Přibice cemetery. In conclusion, although the results provide some interesting insights into the local community, we must take into account that these analyses cover a relatively small portion of the burial ground, which may represent only 1/10 of the original extent. Moreover, not all individuals recovered from this area have been fully analyzed yet. In 2025 season, we will be opening a new excavation site, and it remains to be seen whether it will yield similar results or perhaps change our current understanding of the local community. In the end, some of you already helped us with the initial excavations on Wednesday. I would like, finally, my gratitude to Professor Josef Unger for bringing us to this graveyard, and also for my colleagues from Faculty of Arts for their valuable comments on our research. And above all, I want to thank for the opportunity to meet you here and at Přibice site. Thank you very much.